Mr. Fishbone. Is that? Hey, there he
There
is.
he is.
Hey, good
Hello,
morning,
hello.
man. How are you?
My friend and my fearless
Good.
leader, Aaron Fishbone. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, please, Jesus Christ, hard to top that, man. And
Jesus
so
Christ.
untrue too. But all right, that's my. I'm trying to transition here.
May I ask you? Oh my God! See, now they're gonna take you to school and lop your dick off too and make you a woman. About transitions,
What?
the fish. I'm trying to transition. Said sorry, I had to.
Yeah, he's a
But that's
comedian
actually,
over here.
and just to let people know, that is not a joke that I just said. It actually is, of course. But Trump has actually said this on live and rallies, and there are people who believe this, unfortunately, from and not just maybe the country that we come from. But Mr. Aaron, is Fishbone truly your last name?
It is.
Wow, man! What is
It's
the
not
origin?
It's not the name I made up just for interviews like this.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the? Can I ask you really quickly what the origin of that last name is? That's interesting to me.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
a
well, my
historian.
family.
That's why.
Okay, my family migrated from Eastern Europe, way back when via Ellis Island, and I think it's one of those names that was changed upon arrival. That the family had a Polish last name, and in case my paternal parents and my Belarusian last name, and it was
Wow.
involved in the fish industry some way, presumably. I mean, no one exactly knows, but one of those, names that was changed to Ellis Island, and boom, the Fishbones arrived in America.
I love it.
So,
I love
Aaron,
it.
let me ask: where are you? Where do you vote from, and what brought you to where you are?
Yeah, cool. So classic Dems Abroad question. Where are you from? Where do you vote? So I live in Slovakia right now. I was brought here for the very, very common but still lovely reason for love. So my wife, then girlfriend, now wife, is Slovak woman. So we live here. Been here for 9 years now, and I vote in Washington State, beautiful evergreen state of Washington
Wow.
in Seattle.
Very cool. And so, how long have you been with DA?
I mean, I've been with the very, very loosely affiliated. I mean, it's easy once you're abroad to just kind of sign up and get some updates. But I wasn't actively involved until the 2020 election. I was actually on paternity leave, right? One of the most amazing things about Europe is the parental leave benefits. So
Oh yeah.
we had young kids at the time, and they're older. They might barge in at any moment. But so on my paternity leave, I started volunteering. It was the 2020 election, and I started just volunteering. I mean, just like you, Rob, right? Just knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I got some time interest. It's important." So I started volunteering on the communications team at the time, and was quickly ensnared. And people leave, people come, like life jumps up. We're all volunteers, and so someone takes a job and they leave roles. And so suddenly the communications director role was opened, and I fell into it. Let's put it like that. And so I was comms director throughout the 2020 election. And then I left for a while, and then came back for this last presidential election. I've been comms director since May of 2024.
When you moved, I'm going to throw it to an expat zone. When you moved from the States to Slovakia, what was some of the good parts and the bad points that you felt when you first arrived there, as you started to gel with the people there?
Like culture shocks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd lived abroad before, so it wasn't my first time, and I'd been in Europe. I'd worked here overseas for any number of years. In fact, that's when I met my wife, was like 22, 25 years ago, working in Estonia. So not a very linear path or even very traditional path. But, I mean, it was cool. I've been stateside for a while, so exciting to get back abroad, and, refreshing to be back in the world, right? Like here, you make a wrong turn, suddenly you're in Hungary. You make a wrong turn in the other direction, you're in Austria. Right, so different languages, different currencies, somewhat different cultures and different ways of looking. So that's very cool. That's one of the cool things about Europe, right? Is how close other parts of the world are, other countries, other foods. So there was that, and just being fresh. I've been in Seattle for like 10 years, and it was exciting to get back out into the world. And this part of the world in particular really feels like kind of the cross paths of history, right? The former Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, former Warsaw Pact countries, and former post-Soviet countries, and right here, I mean, is where the Iron Curtain was, right, between Austria and Slovakia. So literally, we were married at a castle overlooking, like the ruins of a castle overlooking the river that was the Iron Curtain between Austria and Slovakia. So,
Wow.
I mean, all that stuff is cool. Like I see a castle. I see Bratislava Castle from my bedroom window. I mean, that's not something we'll ever have in the States.
No.
Medieval castle from my bedroom window. And so plus obviously I was with a woman who became my wife. So that's
I
exciting.
still have to see a castle. I've yet to see a castle. My European life.
Rob, doors open, man. I'm
Really?
sitting in the guest bedroom right now. You can crash here. We got a Murphy bed right behind me.
Fantastic.
Just pull it down for you. We can do this thing in live. So you can see the castle right outside the window.
I'm going to hold you to
You're
that.
invited.
Okay.
Open invitation.
Very cool. So let me ask you a question. Are the Democrats abroad actually doing something?
Oh, softball question, right? Yeah, man, we were doing a lot. As I know you're well aware of, you're intimately involved in. So, I mean, I guess the main thing that we do is, so normally Democrats Abroad is a get out the vote or organization, right? Like spend a lot of our energy and efforts focusing on getting out the vote for elections. And, we did that in 2024. We did it for many previous elections. And I mean, there are elections in 2025, as you well know, right? There was Wisconsin, there were special elections in Florida, Pennsylvania, Florida, wasn't one in New York like we were gearing up for, but okay. Stefanik keeps her seat. But right, Florida elections, 1 and 6, Wisconsin election, and there's going to be upcoming elections, right, for governor of New Jersey and Virginia. So we are, in fact, and plus down ballot races, in like mayors and city council members and whatnot taking place. So we definitely are still mobilizing for elections. But I think the main thing that we're doing, and we have developed, is sort of pivoting into a resistance opposition organization. Right, there are a lot of bad things happening, as you discussed earlier before I came on. And so, how can we, even from afar, be effective in participating in the resistance and the opposition to those bad things happening? So, we have organized a lot of really targeted calling campaigns. Call your senators, call your reps, also call your governors, call your attorneys general, to let them know issues to really kind of take a stand on. So the SAVE Act, like you were talking about before, and others, also protecting benefits, Social Security benefits, and other things. So where we think we can make an impact by mobilizing our collective membership and orienting them towards a specific calling campaign on a specific piece of legislation or a specific vote, like one of the confirmation votes, for example, we are doing that. So we're trying to stay, it's a marathon, not a sprint, unfortunately. Yep. There's going to be a lot of these things, so we don't want to overwhelm the members. But we also have, and it's been a transition, right? Like it has been a transition for a lot of people, knowing how to kind of adopt this new posture, how to sort of stay in touch, how to mobilize in a way that is targeted and, again, impactful, but also not overly exhausting and sustaining. So we have these weekly calls to action that we're focused on targeted issues where we think we can make a particular impact or that are particularly relevant to Americans abroad, because there are issues that are maybe more relevant to us. And I think the last thing is, we are abroad. We are ambassadors for the United States. We are, living amongst people who are not Americans, and we need to be sort of showing the world that 75 million Americans almost voted against this guy, and voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and that so Trump doesn't speak for all Americans. And despite everything that's going on, we need to show them that there are those other, that there is another America out there.
Amen. And you know what? I think it's also important to remember that nearly 52% of the population did not vote for him at all, whether they voted for Calm and Walz or the other
outside
parties.
parties or
and
whatever.
So this ridiculous mandate BS that they throw out consistently, hey, President Trump has a mandate, is, again, as always, another fraudster situation. Now, going back to some of these other issues that we would like to talk about, sir.
Well, let me get one in quick.
Yeah, man, Bodify.
So I'm pretty excited. I work with Aaron semi-regularly, and I'm excited about the initiative to begin training for people, for our members. So graphic design training, there's press training for people that want to talk to the media, can and will talk to the media. Are there particular projects going on right now that you're most excited about through your lens of DA as a whole, or through your specific, communications field?
I mean, the things I mentioned before, the calling campaigns. I mean, I want to, I don't know, we give away the whole story here.
That was a softball.
That was beyond for periodic updates. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Look, I mean, I don't think there are particular initiatives that I am. I mean, yes, there are, I guess, but it's more like the staying on top of things and building an organization or building an operation that is able to sort of sustain itself during all of this, right? Like there's 100, 1,000 atrocities every single day. How are we able to be involved for the long term, and show and highlight the areas where where resistance is working, where Democrats are doing stuff, even though they don't have levers of power in any of the branches of government, at least at the federal level. Keep the members organized and mobilized and the entire membership, and also to reach other Americans abroad, right? Like there are a lot of new Americans coming abroad for different reasons, whether it's study abroad or whether they're, fleeing the regime or whether they're, deployed, or also many Americans moving from abroad back to the States as government, positions and other grants and whatnot get cut, and this government tries to box the United States in. How are we reaching all those new people? So, we have a fairly robust integrated communications operation, right? Digital press, and building that up so that we're publishing content and we're active on all the social media platforms that we're active on every single day. Really like we're a active and regular voice in the progressive and democratic ecosystems, and that we are, kind of putting out our unique viewpoint as Americans abroad on many of the topics, so that for Americans who are coming overseas connect up with us and hear what we have to say, and also so for people back in the States, hear the perspective of Americans abroad. So I think we've built a pretty big team of which you're a part, and just maintaining that and sustaining that, especially in the all volunteer situation that we are. Right, we're all volunteers. We're in 4 continents. Just the comms team is on 4. People are on 4 continents, and so keeping that thing going in that context is I think it's probably the thing I'm most proud of, is just keeping that whole thing going, and where it's fulfilling experience for the volunteers, right? We're not just like, oh my God, I got to do that thing for DA. Rather, it's like, okay, I'm excited. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, how do we suss out what's important from all the crazy shit going on? Right? Like, how do we stay on our foot? There's no silver. Maybe I'll throw that one over to Rob.
It's triage.
I don't think there's any silver bullet. There's triage. And they were trying to focus on positive. It took a while to get here. This was not the posture in February. We're in May. So I think we're learning fast, but they're working fast, but we're learning fast too. But how do we stay on our front foot? How do we stay proactive and not just reactive? Because the centrifugal force, of just being reactive all the time is strong, but it'll kill us.
How do you fight
and how do we? Come on, go for it.
No, I'm just that's making me think of the apathy that I'd written down about. But there is a sense of apathy that seems to be quite pervasive. And we looked at, I believe, one of our chairs here, Annie Grawl, said that there was only about 10% of the Democrats or the voting
Americans abroad
actually voted. And so we see also that about 91 million people stayed home as well. And is there a way, how do you feel about and how do you confront and fight off that apathy with your platform and what you have? And how do you feel about that in general?
I guess there's a few different things you brought up, right? One is Americans back home, stateside, who didn't vote, right? And what are the reasons why they didn't vote? Many reasons. Why do Americans abroad not vote more? Why are 90% of Americans abroad not voting? That's also, I think it's a separate set of reasons and then are people feeling apathetic in this moment? I certainly don't see that as much. I see, I see almost like the incredible emotion, the fear, almost more than anything else, right? The need to, and hence again, that concern about, my bigger concern is people overly reacting to everything going on and tiring themselves out and, focusing on things that are just, kind of press releases, executive orders that are just, not worth more than the paper that they're written on, but treating those as existential issues. Which they are at some level, but we really need to sort of suss out what's important and what's meaningful and what's going to actually, go into force versus what was just, a press like virtue signaling to the MAGA base. Like, look, I said I was going to do this on the campaign trail, and now I have an EO'd, executive order saying that I'm going to do this. Therefore, promise made, promise kept. And it takes a little while to maybe know the answer to all of those things.
Definitely.
So, that's something we're working on. But the issue of why did people stay home, and we could talk about that if you want, or why are Americans abroad not voting as much, or such a small percentage of them voting, we can talk about that too. But I think those are 3 different topics.
The latter. Could we talk about the latter, about why those abroad are not voting?
Do you think there's a specific reason? I kind of just feel like there's a lot of people don't even know about their rights. Like I've stumbled on that because I did a lot of voter registration events in colleges for the campaign. And it's nonpartisan group, obviously, it was voter registration, but like so many people were like, oh, I didn't know I could vote. I had that told to me several times, and I'm just that might be a part of it.
Is that a Gen Z thing?
Also, it might just be a Gen Z thing. Like, I really don't know. But yeah, do you have any particular insight on that? Like anything? And then is there a way we can kind of address that? Because I like the marketing and the stuff that we're doing. You're right. We're the DA is on every single social media page possible. There's events, global events. There's local events. There's all sorts of like community building initiatives. But yeah, I just never got to the bottom of it. Besides thinking like I think a lot of people just don't know that like once you leave the country, you do have the right to vote. And so, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I don't know. We're calling Rob Gen Z, by the way, so that'd be a new one.
I'm old millennial. Old millennial.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, look, I think in general, I mean, who are Americans abroad is a big and diverse group, right? Like there are a lot of people are retired pensioners going abroad so that their dollar goes further, or they want to, move to somewhere warm in the Caribbean or, somewhere cool. A lot of the most people are abroad for family reasons, like myself, like their partner or their kids are, citizens of another country, and they live there for that reason. I mean, that's my situation. A lot of people are abroad for stints. Their companies deployed them abroad for a few years to go work in the field or work at a foreign entity. U.S. military and their families, American diplomats and their families.
Yep.
Peace Corps and people like that. U.S. Formerly USAID workers, people who go on mission trips, right, from the church. But then also a lot of study abroad students. So it's a really diverse range of people who are Americans abroad. And, there's a lot of turnover there, too. So you don't necessarily think about how am I going to vote? I mean, especially if you're not like a person who thinks about voting all the time, how am I going to vote from whatever location I'm in? And then, we have a federated system. So it's really up to the rules are largely driven by the state in which you vote.
Exactly.
So that's a big part of it. Yeah. Although if you register as an American abroad,
from abroad,
which you can do from abroad, right, which you can do as a special category from votefromabroad.org, then you have special federally protected rights as an American citizen abroad, such as the right to receive your ballot 45 days before the election, the ability to not be purged from state election rolls, and more, and the ability to send in a backup ballot in case for any reason there was a logistical issue with your ballot getting back. So they're really important reasons. Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, Annie Grau, for helping me out. Annie again.
Yeah, she's the best.
Oh, Annie's super. She's she's hustling. But look, I think in general, people don't know, or they're not thinking about it. Okay, how do I do that from my dorm in whatever London, or how do I do that from my new office in Hong Kong? And that was before Hong Kong started, stopped sending mail to the United States. Thank you, DJT.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I think a lot of it. First of all, it's just people just don't know. Secondly, they're not thinking about what do I need to do from where I am to how to get it back. And then thirdly, they don't think, about the mechanics of doing it. And then they don't think it maybe makes a difference or it really matters. So is it worth me going through all that rigmarole to do the thing to vote? I mean, plenty of people in the States don't think their vote matters or don't care either. But here it's like that added element of, are you going to then go figure out all that other information, go find the resources, and then send your ballot back? And maybe you have to pay money to get it back, or you have to, do it by hand because your state requires a hand signature and stuff like that. So those three together, I think, probably account for much of it. And then, finally, some people also probably just don't care, just totally checked out, not thinking about the States when they're doing their study abroad, right? It's exciting. They're meeting all kinds of new people from all over the world, or they've got other shit to focus on. And they're not thinking so much about voting back home. So, I mean, combination of all that and other things too, I'm sure.
How do we fight it?
I mean, I think we're fighting it now. I mean, I think like the resistance like movement that's like sort of so much more broader than any one organization, but I think our part of it is really nailing it home. I mean, I love that there's a resistance roundup email that I can check out from DA that tells me everything that's going on so I can stay informed. And I don't say things like, the Democrats aren't doing anything, because I actually looked at and saw everything they're doing. I got to ask you a question, though, and it's a little related, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this, Aaron. Like, you're a very good, I found your leadership style, you're sort of a good team leader, bring people together, but it's all volunteers, and I've never had to lead anyone that I didn't pay. And I'm just curious, like, any like particular like method to the madness, secret sauce there that keeps people kind of motivated? Because everyone in our groups, that we work with are good people and they're highly motivated and they're engaged, and that's hard to do when you don't pay people. So I'm just curious.
I don't know, Rob. So I throw it back at you. How do we keep you engaged and motivated? Because I agree, it is a unique context in which we operate.
But it's not fair because my wife is afraid, and if my wife is afraid, I turn into Van Helsing. So it's not really, it's not so like I'm always going to be engaged. Like I'm always going to work my ass off. I'm going to do it for multiple different levels.
Why do you do that?
Because my wife is afraid.
What do you mean
And
your wife's afraid?
my wife is afraid. My wife she's afraid. She just went to visit her father. She was afraid of these issues that she'd be having. I mean, the state of the United States right now is not particularly friendly to women of color, not
Right.
particularly friendly to people who speak out against the administration. And she has friends and family that are like getting, she volunteered for the Peace Corps.
So it's love overcoming fear that makes you do what you do.
Also, like my grandfather died of COVID long before when Trump was calling it a China virus.
Ay, Madonna.
And was making states compete against each other to get, PPE and masks and things.
yeah.
So there were shortages everywhere. So I just saw the actual, writing on the wall, and I was like, no, I'm not saying I'm going to talk. I'm going to use my loud mouth and I'm going to
Amen.
run about it. But I'm just, I'm one guy trying to be a one-man army, I guess. But
We're two-man army now.
exactly.
I was gonna say, seriously, look at all the hats you're wearing, man. You have the mics. I said the mics you're holding. You got this mic right here, Lucas. You got your things you're doing in VA. You got your GeoTV work in Spain. I mean, I think like any volunteer situation, I think the most important thing is making it feel like a fulfilling experience for volunteers. Make it feel rewarding to them because, again, there's no financial incentive. It's purely just like passion or fear. And the fact that the experience itself, the interactions you're having day to day with the other members of the team are themselves, on balance, positive, fulfilling experience. Because I think, if it was toxic, people wouldn't want to do it. If it felt like hell or like, or if it felt like a drudge work, people wouldn't want to do it. Totally understandable. And so I guess my main thing is, and it involves a lot of like time of my time and talking to people and checking in and, maybe having those conversations where there is a problem, because there's all kinds of like issues that arise, pain points and whatnot. I have to talk people through it. And so it's that kind of time. But you're right. There's no financial incentive. So people are obviously already like interested, and then you just kind of have to work day to day to make sure things flow smoothly, that communication channels are open, like it's working. Because if it's not working, then people are going to check out. And even our digital tools don't by themselves, and our like on paper processes are not enough. It involves oversight and constant sort of like management to keep things running smoothly and address interpersonal issues which do arise. And whatnot. And I guess the last thing is it should be fun and creative, right? Like, I say this in our meetings, like the creative process that we're engaged in of developing content, of creating these videos, of, making sure what is our, American abroad view on this topic or that topic, and making it feel fun and creative and interactive and as an outlet for people to get their views out is really important, because again, otherwise why do it? So, it's like that.
And I guess winning helps. Like, so,
Yeah, there's that.
well, think about it. We stopped the SAVE Act. Like, we put enough pressure on, and that was a huge thing we talked about it earlier. For now, we've stopped the SAVE Act. And my single favorite act of resistance is we did not allow Elon Musk to buy a Wisconsin State Supreme Court seat.
Yeah.
I did voter registration events for the college kids just to get them, even though I only saw like 5.
And major shaving off of the percentage of cuts between them and Florida from the former elections to this one, to these as well.
But he has Space Town now. So soon to be Space Town. Read this article. I mean, he couldn't buy in Wisconsin Supreme Court race, but he is incorporating a town in Texas, the soon SpaceX.
Sounds great.
You mean outside of Austin?
Right.
Yeah, it's on the border.
In the valley where I was born? By South
a lot of
Padre.
land.
Shut up.
I didn't actually know that. Space
Right.
Town.
There's an article that came out in the paper yesterday.
Why don't let's let him go do that. Just get out of the government.
Speaking
Go
of
make that
articles,
Space Town.
because of, we mentioned, Aaron, you mentioned some elections and special elections and things coming up as well. New York Magazine has just put on was it the New Yorker? No, it was New York. A rather, I don't want to say scathing, but scary article about Mr. Fetterman, about Senator from Pennsylvania, Dan Fetterman. I don't know if anybody's heard or seen this or read about it.
It seems speculative, but there's some cause for concern. But I don't know that it's our place to necessarily get into it.
Well, no, this is the thing. With these different elections that are going to be coming up, do you think that we will galvanize people who are outside, like what we deal with, to actually vote, if that were to happen, for the special elections that you just mentioned, for inshallah, we actually have 2026 elections.
Oh yeah, no, Virginia, New Jersey in November, we're already working on that.
So how can we outside get more engaged in things of that might be affected or might not be affected, like in Pennsylvania or whatnot, but in the future, because that's what I mean, we really need to get. My concern is the young ones. How can you not know what's going on if you're consistently on TikTok? You know what I mean? Because there is that element where it's actually a sickness. So when you were talking about how they didn't know, I find it really hard to not know what's going on. So how can we engage those little, the younger crowd to really get involved to vote?
We
There's
should probably ask our Gen Z member here.
yeah,
Ralph.
Go
right.
for it, man. Please.
No, I mean, telling them what they're losing, what the cost of apathy is, what the cost of not participating. I mean, you don't participate, you get a government run by a radical right 4chan conspiracy theorist who hates immigrants. So I think it's important to like lock in like cause and effect for people. Like the cost of apathy is extremely high, and it's higher now because if we don't rock the
There's that word
midterms,
again. Yeah.
if we don't rock the midterms, it's going to be problematic. If they can keep both seats for the whole 4 years, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So both houses of Congress is going to be in a lot of trouble. Getting people motivated to vote is showing the successes, also showing the successes. I mean, the youth of America tend to care about climate change, tend to care about gun violence, tend to care about healthcare, tend to care about an economy that works for everybody. And the Democrats are, in my opinion, solid gold on that issue because they're trying and they're accomplishing legislation, they're accomplishing policy changes that are making lives better for people, that are increasing access to healthcare, that are limiting access to mass killer guns, that are helping fight man-made climate change. So I think it's a combination of not like talking about here's what we've done and here's what we're doing and here's what we're going to do, which I think DA handles pretty well because you just go on the website and you click the resistance roundtable and you see that here's what's happening in DA community building events. Here's what's happening, in France, we have a get together for coffee. In Barcelona, we have a protest. And then afterwards we're going to watch a funny movie. Like community building and past, present, and future.
And all of this is at democratsabroad.org.
You go to democratsabroad.org. Okay. You have to go to democratsabroad.org and find out every bit of information that you need. Join up, help us fight.
Aaron, please.
Yeah, I filibustered you there. Sorry.
I mean, no, that's fine. That's fine. No cloture vote here. So, I mean, I think, look, it's a huge issue. And there's no sort of single answer. I'm 45, so I'm probably not the person most expert to talk about this totally. Am I the oldest person on this call?
No,
right now?
you and I are the same age. I mean, I'm 42.
Oh,
42. You're 42.
I'm 42.
47. We're looking for like 42. Very good. We're 42, looking like 37. I'm solidly 45. So, I mean, look, obviously, being where they are first and foremost, you know what I mean? Having young people involved in our discussions and in our meetings and like helping generate the content that we develop is really, really important. And
hell yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit of on one hand, it's a challenge because a lot of Americans abroad are older, but on the other hand, we are very actively and active on an in-person recruitment on campuses, as well as through, and so actually that's pretty effective. So we get, young people who are studying abroad to participate while they're abroad. Which is great and really fruitful. And then, I think we're increasing, like as a global organization, we are digital first. And so we invest a lot of time and energy and thought into the social media content, both paid and unpaid, that we do, but mostly it's unpaid, our organic social that we're producing. And like right now, we're just revamped our whole TikTok operation, for example. And, we're pretty active on Instagram. And we're active on like almost 10 social media platforms, which is not all of them by any means, right? Social media is fragmenting. People are not all on any, there's not the same dominance of one platforms as it was a few years ago. And certainly it breaks down generationally, also regionally when you get abroad and things like that. But, so we're there. And I think we just need to have, the right people helping create the content and focus on the topics that we're putting out. Right? Like I talked to a study abroad student, the other day, and her first thing was like kind of affordability and how do I pay off my student loans, right? Like that was her kind of most front and center topic was when I get back and when I'm done with this degree, how am I paying off if there's no student loan forgiveness, things like that. So it's a different perspective. It's a different set of issues. But I think one of the other things we need to kind of grapple with is, Trump's superpower is being at the center of like all conversations all the time. just like absolute dominance of media across all of public conversation, whether it's about freaking sports or whether it's about FIFA, whether it's not just news stuff, right? It's culture, it's mascots, it's religion. I mean, it's just so many different topics, and the articles or the coverage all starts with Trump. Trump believes X, Trump did X, Trump what. That's his superpower, being the center of those conversations or in all those conversations, and that's something really, really hard to grapple with. And then the dominant and just the amount of sort of right leaning media, social media that there is. I mean, from an algorithmic perspective, like who owns the platforms and what voices are they promoting? That's a big issue.
Yes,
also, just the sheer number and volume and reach of right leaning platforms and programs. Obviously, you guys are doing this is one big way to. And that's awesome. But then the last point is, I mean, I do think, and this is something else, we talk about whenever someone says like on the left is like, I'm going to start a podcast or I'm going to start a program. It's like almost, it's often explicitly about politics, right? So this is maybe a question for you guys. It's not like politics is downstream of culture, right? Like, Barstool Sports was about sports well before it started getting into politics, right? And, Rogan was talking about like kind of random culture issues long before he started getting, increasingly politicized. So,
Ancient aliens, yeah.
And so on, right? And so many others. So, I mean, how do we have, let's say, discussions on culture and life and sports and, clothes and gardening and all that other shit that, with ultimately like a political view thrown in that is not, but it's not explicitly about politics, so that the people who are hearing and are listening to that conversation are just like normal people doing their normal people thing. But at the same time, they're not being radicalized to the right because the host of the show ultimately becomes radicalized or is paid to promote that.
It's so right. You're so right. And that's sort of part of our mandate is that it's been so insane that we haven't had the ability to branch out as much as we have wanted to do. But you're absolutely right. A conversation that we have about like his dating life or our dogs has a potential to go pretty more viral than us having a breakdown of the SAVE Act or us having a conversation.
Obviously, this interview clearly is like
right. Yeah,
Well, and also the different guests that we get, because like for June, there's going to be some comedians and some rockers that we're going to have here who are local expat knowns.
And who's the orgasmic lifestyle sexpert, author, and genius?
But the thing is that also those kinds of issues, Well, there we go. Now she's Irish, but that's a whole other ball game. But isn't 40% of our country? Now then, there's something else, man. Has anyone ever told you? I'm sure they motherfucking have, but you look like actor Ron Livingston.
No.
Do you know who that actor is? From Office Space.
Oh, really? Okay.
But he was also in
All right.
There's a curveball.
And Sex and the City as well. Just saying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you totally do, man. But also in reference to the 100 days, we've only got 15 more minutes. Not even 15 minutes.
Let's break down the worst.
Break down some opinions on that.
Sure.
What do you think about that? What is one of the things, or a few of the things, Aaron, that have stuck out to you over the last 102 days? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like the worst nuggets of the worst do you have an opinion on?
Some juicy morsels, love.
Jesus.
I mean, toddler citizens being deported.
There you go.
Is probably
conclusively evil.
The worst thing,
fighting cancer.
Legal permanent residents being picked up at their citizenship hearings and deported. Or arrested, or in this case, he wasn't deported. Kilmar Albergo Garcia, legal permanent resident, being picked up, separated from his citizen family, and sent to an El Salvadoran prison. And they laugh about it. It probably tops the list.
Thank you.
Jeez, no, I mean it's pure evil. The dehumanization and the lies that back it all up. I mean, Trump's still lying about fake tattoos or something, and hasn't shown a court.
God. Yeah. And repeated it over and over 7 times in that
interview. So egregious that even a Trump judge in Texas shut him down for using the Alien Enemies Act?
Correct.
That he's using for the authority. Shut that down completely and said it was the most farcical thing he ever heard in his life.
But that did not stop a judge being arrested and being now ousted out of her position as well in Wisconsin. And she is going to go to trial for 2 federal charges against her.
So that'd be up there there among the worst.
How do you gentlemen feel about the denial of what the Supreme Court is saying? Like how he's absolutely not doing what is being mandated by the courts?
It's bad.
Are we in a constitutional crisis then?
I would say yes. I would say definitely. If it's going to take a few more crises for it to really hit home, and then maybe some tanks rolling down Washington D.C. will nail it home for
Oh, well, they'll
people.
have that soon because they're going to have an $82 million celebration for his birthday, a la North Korea,
So I guess
apparently.
tough question: do you believe the United States is in a constitutional crisis at the moment?
No, we're not quite there, but I think
Okay.
we are definitely inching, ever closer to it. I mean, thus far they're at least paying lip service to what the courts are saying on most of the issues. Not necessarily this issue of did they turn the plane around, for the group of people who are already in the air, but they're still sort of like playing lip service in the sense of trying to answer, I think, a little bit here and there. But look, I mean, we're only a few steps away from it being a full blown a full blown situation. And when will we get there? I don't know. Hopefully, we won't. I mean, it's not something anyone is cheering on, right? And so so we'll see. I mean, I guess the question of like, but what is our posture at that point, right? Like, what can people do at that point, right? Because I struggle with people who are like, already living with the absolute worst case scenario, where like basically some civil war, right? Like posse comitatus, U.S. soldiers on the street, policing on the streets, and then
Correct.
suddenly, the only thing to do is like armed revolt, versus which to me is, hopefully that we'll never get there. But I know people who live in that world, right? They talk about it and stuff
Hmm.
already. And then how do you take, let's say, as from a oppositional perspective standpoint and a resistance standpoint, take measured steps to prevent us from even getting there? And I mean, there are hundreds
That's
of
right.
examples of people in the streets, people standing up, people fighting back. These law firms that have all signed, friends of the court briefs in favor of the law firms that have stood up against Trump's edicts. Right? The universities that are now banding together to support what Harvard did. And then, hundreds of acts, right, from Bishop Boudet to what, Dems in Congress are doing, to people who are protesting against, closures of national parks and firing of EPA and firing of NIH. And so there are hundreds of acts of opposition taking place. And the point is, can these stop us from getting to that authoritarian point? And I mean, I think this is like one of the
That's fair.
straying. I'm an optimist. So I think the strength of the bonds of civil society that we have, the bonds of civic life, the bonds of kind of the familiarity that people have with public engagement and with being involved in their community. There's a lot there, and it's being flexed again. And I hope that in many, many different ways and forums, and from the boardroom to the streets to the courts to to Congress and many other places, and I hope that works.
No, you're right. It's a little bit of a tricky sentiment because, like, if they are following some court orders, if they are listening to some, some rulings from judges, then they get to be, well, technically, and it's like, well, technically, they did vote in January on January 6th, to
Yeah,
certify
but the
the
main
election.
one, the Supreme Court mandate, they skewered the scene with a gangster lean, and that to me is very, very vocal.
I think the precipice argument makes a lot of sense. Like if the resistance was just being steamrolled completely, if there was and we could get, he's right, we could very well get there, and that's the intention. I believe that's his intention. But I agree that like we're the whole ever so scaredly, ever so patiently holding firm, attempting to hold firm to a free country.
Yeah, man.
So I get it. Precipice, not quite, but on a path is fair.
Yeah, and
Is
trying to
fair.
not like mentally just go straight to that precipice point, because I don't think that's productive, at least certainly not in
Right. So like
my
on the
position.
path, yeah. I mean, because like what I think is absolutely insane is we're circling back again, I guess, to it's usually immigration, but declaring an executive order that birthright citizenship is basically nothing. That no, this president says birthright citizenship isn't a thing, and that's obviously been smashed down in courts too. For me, that's obviously one of the worst things. But I think the worst thing is completely legal, is what RFK Jr. is doing to healthcare in the United States. What RFK is doing to HHS. I mean, it's absolutely insane that taxpayer resources are investigating debunked conspiracy theories,
While they're cutting the tax administration.
and they're cutting out people that help you, and they're cutting out people that like actually help. Like they're firing scientists, they're firing
So
doctors.
far, over 100 and nearly 140,000 workers.
And so that's like that's my, for me, that's the worst because we saw the damage of the pandemic. I have personal tragedy revolving AIDS
Exactly, man.
epidemic that makes me sick to my stomach that funding for AIDS medicine, that's pennies on the dollar, isn't being being recast as some sort of like plot, some globalist plot or something like that, and that's why people have to die of AIDS because Donald Trump says it's a globalist plot or something. And I think those two things specifically relating to healthcare are, for me, the worst of
I
the
also
worst.
think it's important to remember that the people that will be dying of AIDS are black.
Oh yeah, people
You
that
know,
Trump
and
doesn't
I
care
think
about.
exactly, and I think the targeted of the immigrant thing is really going after Latinos. And as a Latino myself, with a father who's a naturalized citizen, it's very daunting. So I understand what you were saying about what your wife is having to do because I don't even want my father there anymore,
Yeah.
and
You know,
that
there's
is
this.
his country.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You know, there's this place, Cancer Alley, in Louisiana, right, where some of the most polluting companies are just like
Dumping.
lined up next to each other, dumping. Yeah, and
Mm.
so for 10 decades, you know, they've been doing this work, and the people in that community have been like screaming to the government to try to help to regulate them because you know, the carcinogens in the air and the levels of asthma and other kind of cancers in that region are so far above normal levels, and it's mostly, I think it's
It's
exclusively people of
beyond.
color who live there. And
Yeah.
so finally, the Biden administration passed a law to actually regulate that, and now the Trump administration is rolling that back.
And I'm sure
So, I
President
mean,
Kennedy, Senator Kennedy's happy about that.
Yes, yeah, RFK.
That fake ass accent. Fake ass accent.
Yeah. Oh, Senator Kennedy. Sorry,
I
sorry,
think
sorry.
it's
The fake
the
accent Kennedy. Sorry.
Yes,
My bad.
sorry.
My
From
apologies.
Louisiana, excuse me.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Who's
yeah.
done nothing.
They're just
Oh, right,
cartoonishly evil.
totally.
Like, why am I a
They
Democrat?
are. I mean,
Because that's why.
yeah,
There's
the
not.
malice is the point, and
Hmm.
it is extremely
So
damaging.
we
And
always like to
hey,
end on a high note.
people who regulate.
We always like to try
After
to end
these
on a high note.
55 minutes of.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. I'm
No,
feeling
no, no.
optimistic. Who the hell ain't, right?
I am because we're actually, you can see progress and you can see the fire in people's eyes. Like I see it in protests. I see it in voter registration events. I see it on our group chat where we're sometimes yelling at each other. It's because there's a lot of passion. We're all ready to fight. And when you see something horrible happening, look for the helpers. And I like being on the team of the helpers. So, Aaron, give us a little optimism. Give us a little, what are you happy about with the resistance? What can we do more of? And what can Americans abroad specifically do more of and such?
We got to do more of everything. I mean, that's clear, right? Any flood the zone strategy requires us to flood the zone back. I mean, but again, I think we do need to be targeted. I think we need to stay, you know, kind of suss out the, you know, what is important from all the other stuff that's going on, because there's just too much, and we'll exhaust ourselves and, you know, just spin our heads in 1,000 directions and not be sustainable. We're like, after this, I'm going to garden. I am going to go with my kids, and we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to plant salad, like lettuce and carrots, grow our own food, you know, do normal stuff.
How many babies do you have?
I have two. They're 6 and 8.
Okay, so not too
So,
little, not
yes.
too little.
Yeah.
No, they're not that little. No, they're old enough now. In fact, my
Hell
daughter and I started
yeah.
talking about
It's much more
news the other
fun
day.
then.
Put them to work in the
Tomorrow.
garden, too. I like that idea. Get him-
Look
Yeah,
at
we gotta
Rob saying
get there,
put him to
man.
work. Put him to
We're
work.
not,
Amen.
totally not. Right, they're my kids. It doesn't count as slave labor. No, but we got to get there. We got to like, get on our bikes. We got to ride out. We're members of a community garden on the kind of outskirts of Bratislava, but it's great. We'll meet some people. We'll grow some food. So we're going to do that. I got to spend increasing amounts of time with my kids and
Amen.
like kind of also have a regular life that is not like this thing is really big. It's really important. It impacts us all around the world. It impacts me and my job as well because of the and the knock-on effects of the tariffs and the trade war are having on the global economy and whatnot. I mean, that directly impacts my jobs, but we can't just spend our whole day-to-day lives focused on, you know, the Republicans and the sort of state of governance politics in America. Certainly at the federal level, right? You need to have other things to do. So I think we need to do more of our core messaging as DA. We need to be more creative, be more innovative, reach more people, have fun with that as well, because it should be fun. And I think that joy then would come out through the content that we produce, and then that way reach more people. We need to do things that are not just that, so that we have lives and that we're full humans and that we're able to sustain ourselves and, you know, have joy in our hearts and like live lives and be healthy, even with all the crazy shit coming on down. And I think we need to stay close to people too. Like it shouldn't always just be about politics. So like even my, let's say, family members back home who are not, you know, that don't share the exact same political views as me or the views of the direction that we're going. I don't even want to call it all politics anymore because it's like the world, right? And the state of country and the state of civil society and law and people we know in our communities. staying close with them so that like when we can have hard conversations, you know, and that we can also have love for each other when hard though that might be on certain topics, so that when we're together and, you know, we're still family and we can then have hard conversations, you know, especially when it comes time for elections day again.
There we
I don't
go.
know.
Well, we're going to wrap it up there.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
That's
Where
it.
can people find you? And the
What do you
organization.
mean? Where? Oh, well, we're Democrats Abroad, as you said, democratsabroad.org. I am on LinkedIn and, you know, Instagram and Blue Sky as Aaron Fishbone or some version of that. And
I just love that name, dude. I love that name.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I should have my Fishbone T-shirt on, like the band. You know, that was
Because that's what it makes me think of.
Next
Jesus
time.
Christ, dude. That's
next time
it.
next time you have me back, I'll come on with my Fishbone shirt.
You
All right?
already know, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Take care, guys.
Go have a
Thanks,
beautiful time with the babies. And folks, thank you everybody for being here with The Way It Works Now with Rob and Lucas and Rob.